So what you don't want to do is grab that rod and a death grip. And you don't want to grab the bottom with a death grip. Very light at the top. In fact, almost not at all. Very light at the bottom. So it's very light in the hand. Both hands very light. I'm going to lay this line down, make it come around, pull the bottom hand. There's the cast. You're going to come around and circle that tip. Watch the reel. You come in sideways, you turn the reel like that there, you're right over the top. Right over the top. There's the cast actually. So it's boom. Pull the bottom hand. Watch how that rod comes around. And you pull the bottom hand. Around, pull the bottom hand. That's what excites that rod. So I'm going to make this time just a simple switch cast. Switch cast is just a back and forth cast with no change of direction option. Hang on, here we go. That's just a simple switch cast right there. Back and forth, there's no change in direction. Now this time I want to go out that way. There's a couple things I could do. I could use a single spey, which I point my rod to where I want it to go, come around, anchor, and go. Double spey, set it up. Out, around, and go. The snake roll. Right there. That's a snake roll back up. That eliminates the double spey. I don't like that double spey, never have. It's a great cast, it's a very powerful cast. So we snake roll this up, like that. So what we're going to talk about is where I stop the rod. So I'm going to come forward and stop the rod high, so it gives line flight, like a plane leaving a runway. So that's the stopping point there. Anything lower than that, when you use your top hand, what you're doing is you're forcing that tip down with your top hand. You want to stop with your elbow bent like that there, at least like that, about that much right there. There, right there. That's where you stop. Very light in the hand. Okay, flies up there. I'm going to come around here by shoulder. Make the cast. It's that simple. But the minute you grab that top hand and squeeze it, you're going to drive that tip down to the water. There's a thing in casting called deflection. When you come forward, you're going to stop that rod right there. That's where you stop. If you stop any lower than that, you're going to get what's called deflection. The tip is going to do that, and the line is going to follow that tip, and it's going to shoot it right in the water. I'm going to make a cast like that just to show you what I mean. See? It just crashes. You can tell if you're using too much hand. It'll go out and it'll fizzle and it'll fall apart. One thing you have to do is you got to wait for that fly to move. Every video I've watched, in particular with Ed Ward and Dick Hogan and those guys, they never mention it, but they're looking off to their fly side. Wherever the fly is, they're looking at it when they come around. Right there. That's going to go. It'll go every time. You'll see the fly start to move, and when the fly is moving, that means your D-loop is building. Parry poke. Right there, right there. Right when you see it make that little turn, that's when you got to get on it. It's that important. If there's anything, it's how you pivot your hands and watch that fly. especially when it's dead. If you're just doing a switch cast, the fly's already in motion. There's a switch cast right there. It's going to go. That's not a problem. But if you're dead in the water, or dead on if you do a cast like this here, Perry poke, there it is. The minute that fly moves, or the split second, right when you see it make that little turn, that's when you got to get on it. So what we're trying to do is create a D-loop behind us. Here it goes. You'll see the fly stop. Perfect. We got a nice kiss and go. Kiss, go. Up, around, and pull it with your bottom hand. That's the key. That's the hardest thing it was for me to learn. But I'll tell you what, once you do it, it's unbelievable how the line speed you get with it. As you come up with that and make that D-loop, make sure that your thumb is pointed in that direction. And here's why. I'm going to come up here. Look at where my D-loop stopped, out here. Watch what happens if I turn my D-loop into me. I blew it. It's way over here. Now I got to come around. You're not going to make the cast. You're going to kill the D-loop. You got to make sure that your thumb is pointed in the direction that you want the D-loop to go. So right here, right there. Look where the D-loop goes. Right there. I was watching some videos this morning. They were talking about a 180. When you do a 180, you better get that rod way up in the air, because if you don't, that D-loop is going to fall in the water behind you, and then you're going to rip that water open back here. You do not want to do that. You do not want to go into a 180. You want to go to a 45 out here. There. Watch where it goes. 45. And my thumb is pointing in that direction. That's key. That's key. The thumb's there, not there. If you stop there, your D-loop's going to wrap around the back side of you. It's not going to go no place. You blew it. So now I got my line in the water. I've got to turn my reel over flat like this. Watch the reel only. And over the top. That's what's going to make it go. So it's out, over the top, boom. So we'll do a sea spey here. Just stop for a moment. Think about what you're going to do. You're going to come out and you're going to sweep that rod tip low to the water. As you're coming around, you start to raise it to do that, boom. So that's what's going to happen. The reel's laying sideways here. We're going to come around like that, come over the top, and we're going to make the cast. It'll go every single time. But if you come around like this and go too fast, nothing's going to happen. The method I use, it sounds a little silly, but it works for me. 1001, 1002, 1003, and there's the cast. That's the timing that I use, or what I learned right on this beach here, as a matter of fact. When I first started, what I'd do is I'd come around like this, and then I'd go, thinking I'd go, and I go, why won't that go? Because if you watch my bottom hand, here, I just pull it with my index finger is all I did. So I'm going to make about a 90-foot caster by just pulling it with my index finger of my left hand. There. It's gone. But if I came around holding that rod like this and come around like this here, and all it's going to do is drive that tip down. It's just that light in the hand. That's the whole key. Do not squeeze that rod like this. You're not being able, you can't pivot that rod when you got the bottom hand like this. But when you do that finger, like I'm talking about, just holding it like this. See how I can pivot that rod? That's the whole key. Whoa, that pivot. All right. You don't have to bring the line around the back like I do. You can have it out here if you want. There's no. But what you want to hear when that stops, what you want to hear is that little, that noise there tells you that it accelerated that top loop and drove that leader over. If it doesn't do that, it goes out and it just kind of loses energy and it just kind of falls down in a pile. So what you want to do each time you cast, you want to hear that boop, like that. I call it burping the reel. That's just my silly way of talking about it. But anyway, so here we're going to do a sea spey. When you do a sea spey, it flies over here. I'm going to kind of push the rod out and around, pull that bottom hand, and there's the cast. I'll do that again. So it's up, spin, and the rod's the opposite of the fly. Going to push out, around. It is called out and around, and that's Ed Ward's statement, or that's what he uses. I'm going to kind of push the rod out and around, pull that bottom hand, and there's the cast. But I can't emphasize enough how you leave that reel like that, and you come around, and you pivot, and you're going to pull this with the bottom hand. You can see right there, it wants to go right there just by pulling that finger like that. In fact, there it is. There's the cast. All I did is just pull it that hard, that hard. Any harder than that, you're just putting too much power in it. You're bringing the rod tip down. The rod tip drives the line down to the water. When you refer to overhang, it's the amount of running line outside of the rod tip to the actual head itself, be that a scanty or a skagit. It makes no difference. It's all the same. The overhang is critical, 10 to 15 inches. See? No good. Softly. Softly. That's the key. Keep in mind, less is more.